Howdy, friends. This is Annie Fonte, and you are listening to the Badass Soul-Seeking Warrior podcast. On each episode, I chat with a different guest and ask them to share their stories about what they were doing before they decided to redesign their life, what they're doing now, and how they navigated through the challenges and events in their life to get to where they are today. What realizations and transformations did they experience? What fears did they overcome? And ultimately, how did they create a life that they love? Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Badass Soul-Seeking Warrior podcast. I'm really excited to have today's guest join me. Her name is Ashley Holt. And the reason I'm excited about this is one of the primary things I talk about on the Badass Soul-Seeking Warrior podcast is redesigning, reinventing, and creating a life that you love. And Ashley has certainly done that. We're going to hear all about that in a few minutes. But first, a little bit about her. She's the mother of two daughters. She's a published author, just published her 6th book, and a nonprofit founder, a speaker, and a former Mrs. Alabama. And prior to all of this, she spent time in corporate America with a Fortune 500 company where she excelled in the area of personal growth and women leadership roles. And to this day is very involved in public speaking, television and radio appearances, and really fulfilling her passion to become a mentor and a thought leader and a beautiful example for women and young women and even children with some of her children's books on how to really thrive in our living. So Ashley, thanks so much for carving out some time to join us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here and just to have this great conversation. It's so wonderful to connect with like-minded women.
Likewise, I appreciate it. So I always jump right in, and I do quite a bit of research when I talk to my guest. And so as I was researching, I had something that you quoted, and I thought, why not start here? Let's dive right in. You said that you battled low self-esteem, self-doubt, and fear-based thinking most of your life. Tell us about that.
Yeah. Just hearing that, it kind of chokes me up because I wrote it, but when you hear it out loud, it's just even so much more powerful, and it kind of takes me back to that time.
Right.
It goes back to my childhood, really. I had a pretty good childhood, right? I probably had a better childhood than 95% of people out there. So I don't want to complain about that. However, I did have a mom that was emotionally unavailable to me. And I remember, if I think about my childhood, I always felt like I was in the way. I was a problem. Everything I did was wrong and a mistake. I felt like a mistake. And so the story I from a young child was telling myself was, I'm unlovable. I am impossible to love. And I feel like, of course, that's like the seeds of low self-esteem and low self-worth and not having any confidence. And so what was I doing? The rest of my life, unintentionally attracting more and more relationships that reflected that belief system back to me. So I feel like I was, a magnet for toxic relationships, all kinds, whether it was romantic or friendships or, even in the working environment, I was constantly having this battle. And at the end of the day, I got sick and tired of being sick and tired of feeling like that. And I had to figure it out. And I feel like my whole life I had looked outside of me for the answers, like the answers out here, the answers over here, the answers if I do this. And what my journey, my personal transformation journey, just so shockingly and radically taught me was that everything I needed was inside me. And the day I figured that out and started giving power to what was within me instead of everything that was without outside of me, things started to shift. And I was able to identify those belief systems that weren't serving me and flip that script in my brain. And when I was able to do that, then guess what? Then the true story starts being, revealed to you in those outside relationships. You start becoming a magnet for something so much better. And so that became my mission unintentionally, completely. I wasn't expecting, when I was in those deep, dark, low self-esteem moments that I would be teaching how to overcome that.
Right.
But that's what it turned into. So I hope that answered your question.
Yes, and I always love to have these conversations because I think it's very useful for our listeners, whether they be women or men,
Right.
because you've either been a child or you're currently a parent or you're in a relationship of some sort, usually the folks that listen in. And so I'm interested in kind of those different stages of your life, because it sounds like you were pretty young when you started to feel like I'm not lovable. How did you manage that as a younger child, then in your teen years, and then as you kind of got a little older, maybe in your late teens, early 20s? How did you, without probably the resources you really needed that you have today, how did you manage yourself through that? Because I know a lot of these listeners and audience members can relate to that in a certain way. And I think oftentimes we think we're the only one that feels that way, or we're the only one that has those thoughts, and we're not. So how'd that go for you?
Well, that's such a loaded question, because my first response is like, I took a lot of stumbles and falls because of that, right? So, for something from that I remember as a child took me into my teen years, and then was validated as a teen through other experiences, and then through my college years, or, even in a marriage that failed. Like, all of those things were part of these stumbles and falls. But I hate to say that, because part of what I like to say is overcoming these obstacles, or these big, scary things that we think are huge failures in life. They really aren't. Those are our stepping stones to our greatness. Those are the stepping stones to our purpose. So, did I navigate, that I am lovable story in my mind very well? No, I didn't. I did all the things wrong, right? I was, oh my gosh, friends with the wrong people. I accepted behaviors from people that weren't okay, for years and years and years, until I couldn't do it anymore. Till I woke up one day and I'm 37 with 2 daughters, and I'm saying, oh my gosh, I'm taking care of these 2 beautiful daughters, and I don't want them to be like me. Ultimately you have that moment, you kind of crash and burn. And, for me, it was just in a toxic relationship where I knew divorce was inevitable. And I had to look myself in the mirror and say, where did I go wrong? How did I end up in a place where I was so powerless and helpless, and where I was being demeaned and devalued every day, where my existence didn't matter? And did I want to teach my girls to do that?
Yeah.
So no, of course I didn't. And it was at that moment where I said, I don't know I don't know what I don't know, right? When you don't get there on purpose, you just have to figure out, well, what do I do now?
Right.
So I try my best to just be that vehicle for someone who doesn't know what they don't know. And, that was a whole journey in itself. And I'm sure we'll go into more. So
Yeah,
I hope.
we will. In your intention section of your book, your most recent book, Goddess Wake Up, you wrote, the day I started unapologetically believing in myself is the day that I decided to show up for my life. I decided to show up and take the responsibility to change my thoughts and to defeat the false belief systems that society projects upon us, which we knowingly and sometimes unknowingly accept as truth. So was there a day? Did you have that epiphany moment? If so, tell us about that. And then what are some of these societal or cultural projections that we buy into, that whether they're true or not, we hook onto and really use those to guide us versus our own instincts or our own authenticity?
Great questions. I think definitely there was a moment, and again, it wasn't planned. It's just, I think fate and destiny have these ways of giving you what you need at the moment you need them. And at the time, I was a stay-at-home mom, and network marketing, an opportunity there came across my path, and the company was huge on personal development, and I didn't even know that term. Like, I was too busy trying to handle the kids and everything else that was going on. And they were like, read 10 pages of a good book a day. And I was just like, oh, I do love to read. And when was the last time I read a book? And so I remember just trying to pick out a book that interests me. And it was something, it was a Gabrielle Bernstein book, and it was May Cause Miracles. And so I was like, oh, read this. And then also the company was just feeding self-development. And so they introduced positive affirmations to me. I remember someone saying, like, you're supposed to say these affirmations. And I was like, what is that? and feeling really uncomfortable doing it. You know, first you just read them, and then maybe you're supposed to actually say them out loud. You can even look in the mirror while saying them. And if you suffer from low self-esteem and confidence, and you feel worthless, like, to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I am strong, I am beautiful, I am, you know, all these compliments to yourself, it is a very awkward experience. And I had to do that, and it worked. You know, even from just a few statements on one day, I remember saying, wow, like, that feels good. And I can't remember the last time something felt good. And then I started researching, like, why is this working? Because it was becoming a daily practice for me. And I don't know if you know this, but you can actually learn another language in your sleep, because your subconscious and your mind is always running, right? So I mean, it's going to take some time, but if you were to listen to another language in your sleep for a long period of time, you can actually learn that language. So I remember thinking, well, that's interesting. What if I did affirmations while I slept? So I found some 8-hour affirmations on YouTube, and I would put my earphones in my ear, because we didn't have AirPods then, right? And I remember my husband at the time would laugh at me. He's like, what are you doing? You know, that's so dumb. And, you know, and I was just like, I'm doing it. Nothing, like, it's got to work, right? It's got to work. But from day one, I remember waking up and feeling like a completely different person. And so then, you know, the divorce is happening, and I'm looking at my children, and I'm looking at them going, you're not going to be 37 and have no confidence in self-esteem and self-worth. I'm introducing these to you now because it was way too late for me. So I thought, let me write, like, how can, during this divorce, I give them the most positive experience through all of this? So I thought, well, I'll just write some affirmations. And my oldest daughter was 8 at the time, and she can draw some pictures because she was a great artist, or she still is a great artist. And so that little idea ended up becoming my first book and being published, and then in bookstores, and became a series. And then it went from there. So I was just so passionate about introducing affirmations to children, because that would have made such a difference in my life. So we can talk about, like, inner child healing and things like that. But when I go back now and I look at my mom, or the experiences I had, I used to have so much anger and resentment around that. But then when I could change my perspective on that, and if those things hadn't happened to me, that wouldn't have been so important to me to put into the world, or just for me to do with my kids. So now I look back on it and I have a lot of grace and a lot of forgiveness. So I know I'm kind of going down a lot of different roads there, but that was the one moment where it happened for me. It's just this company that said, read 10 pages of a book a day. Mm-hmm. And then started, like, just understanding what affirmations were and incorporating those into my life. And then it just catapulted from there. So you stumbled on becoming an author. Yes. I had 20 years in, like, sales and marketing experience. It was with you know, corporate America, like, writing books was not ever on my radar, but somehow here I am. And it's my full-time gig now. So funny how the world works. And in doing my research, once again, I was watching some of the videos that you were a guest on a television program. And you said another reason that you started writing these children's books is you found, and it was hard for me to hear it, but I know you'll know to tell us and share with the audience, that there were over 700,000 6 to 12-year-olds on antidepressants. And I don't know what demographic that covers, if that was in a state or a particular area. And that was such a stunning statistic to you, that was another motivation to find a vehicle to help these young kids overcome getting to that point. 6 years old is really, really young to already get to the point where someone feels like you need to be on antidepressants, because you really at that age can't make that decision for yourself. No. And I mean, can you believe that? Like, 6-year-olds on antidepressants. And it just made me go, one, why is this not taken more seriously? What are we actively doing as a society to change this? Because we're going to school and kids are spending 40 hours a week there learning math and history and English, and that's great. I'm not knocking academics by any means, but what is being taken for these children who we don't know the story when they go home? Yeah. And if we were to build their self-worth and their confidence and, you know, self-love within them from a young age, how much better would their grades be? like how much more confidence would they have in themselves when taking a test, or in their body image when they're in, as they grow? Like, it affects everything, but it's not taught. And it wasn't taught to me. And I stumbled upon it at 37, and maybe there are, other children who don't need it and have happy, healthy childhoods, but that's not realistic. I don't think I've met any adult that didn't have some sort of something that happened to them as a child that affected their belief system going into adulthood.
Yeah, and prior to writing these books, it's my understanding also that you started more of the personal development coaching prior to starting to write the books. And I'm curious, with the research you've done and the work you've done with mostly women, it sounds like, and maybe some kids, is there a common construct that women or children face where they get stuck, or where they kind of get off the rails a little bit? Is it, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable enough, I'm not something enough? Have you found that there's a common thread?
I feel like it's two things. It comes down to the not enoughs and the twos. So usually, like, something, our world, our belief system is, I'm either too much of this, I'm too happy, I'm too energetic, I'm too bossy, I'm too whatever, or I'm not enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not skinny enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not, and it comes down to those two things, and usually it's one or the others, and we give power to those instead of just embracing our authenticity of exactly who we are. We're exactly who we're meant to be. But going back to the personal development and some of the stereotypes, when I started in corporate America, for me personally in my company, there was only a handful of women at the time. So gosh, in the entire company, maybe, I hate to quote a number, but probably 2% of the company was women. And so when I was going up, I remember getting promoted, and the men would be like, oh, she was only promoted because she's a woman and they need more people in leadership roles. And this was real life, and it was a Fortune 500 company again. So then on top of that, there wasn't, as it started growing a little bit, they needed kind of a women's support group to kind of talk through these things, or to be mentors for each other. And so I was able to kind of kick that off within the company, and that was a huge deal for me. And this was before writing books and before doing what I do now. But it's so funny, these little seeds that were being planted all along that I had no idea were actually had a lot bigger meaning than I ever really realized at the time.
Yes, and it's interesting because I spent a good deal of time in corporate America before I jumped in, and now I'm a serial entrepreneur. And same with you, probably even before you, I was in corporate America when it was predominantly male, and I was doing real estate development. I was buying land and building hotels for Residence Inn, which was then acquired by Marriott Corporation. And I never experienced, what's the best way to put this? I noticed it. And yes, there were things that men would say or do, and I took note of it, but I never experienced me personally feeling like I couldn't be promoted, or I couldn't offer the same as a man in my company. And I think that comes down to, for me, a couple of things. One, I was raised with brothers. I was around boys and men my whole life, and I loved them. I just always did and always will. And so I always felt comfortable in that environment. And I grew up on a farm, and I was out with my brothers doing all the farm things, driving tractors and trucks and all those sorts of things. And so I never had this belief system that I couldn't do everything they could do, or that because I was a woman, things were going to be different for me. And so I think that comes from what you're talking about, and then we'll jump into your book here in a few minutes. I always came at my career when I was in corporate America from me just being me. I wasn't trying to be a guy. I wasn't trying to be better or worse than a guy. I wasn't trying to overdo my being a girl or a woman. I just showed up every day as me, doing the best I could with the resources I had at the time. And so I'm wondering if you, once again, because you've coached and dealt with a lot of women, if there's advice that you give them, or how it comes that they show up with that. I don't want to say it's a chip on the shoulder, but they have this idea that because they're women, they're always going to be a rung below.
Whew. That's such a powerful question. And I think the first thing that comes to mind, so I'm just going to go with that, is I personally believe there's just a skewed belief on what strength is. And society and corporations kind of think, or do think, more of this masculine energy is better or stronger or what you're supposed to be. And for me, what I love to instill with anyone I'm talking to is the balance, bringing the balance back more to the feminine power. Just because you're a more feminine energy does not mean you're less powerful or less strong, or, you know, so that it's kind of a great lead into the goddess, and why I came up with the book called Goddess Wake Up, because I wanted to make sure women could tune into their inner feminine power and to change the way society and the world sees feminine power, because we've got to bring more balance to what that is, because that is, it's compassion, it's empathy, it's, you know, it's a different type of energy other than this do, like go, harder, harder, harder. A feminine energy is very different, but it's very powerful when you align to what that kind of superpower is for you, because each of us have our own special gift within that energy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It makes sense, and it would be good. And I like that you write children's book to help, you know, these young girls never have to get to that place in the first place where they feel less than, or they're compared to, or this, it's a strength, you know, they're going to fight it out from a strength standpoint. I truly believe that being a woman and showing up with that feminine energy is one of the most powerful superpowers there is, because I am so taken with and so am attracted to energetically to a woman who walks into a boardroom or into an office and she shows her femininity. She dresses beautifully and she holds herself beautifully, and she's not trying to be one of the guys. She's she is. And when she speaks in a very feminine and compassionate and embracing way, versus trying to show up as, you know, the big tough girl or something like that. I think there's a lot to be said for that. So, like you said, that's a good segue into your book. Beautiful. Goddess Wake Up. I have it. I read it. It's a wonderful 28-day kind of a roadmap for people. So let's dive into this. Give us a high-level view of the book and what inspired you to write it. You talked a little bit about what inspired you to write it, but what is it about, and why did you write this book?
Yeah, so my first books were children's books with positive affirmations, and then as my oldest grew into her middle school years, I thought, oh gosh, you know, I just had flashbacks of these nightmares for me, and so I thought, well, I'll just write a book for teen girls now that will help them build confidence and self-esteem, make it more, you know, intentional around that age. And so then I started aligning with nonprofit organizations and speaking to these groups, and the moms after would pull me aside and say, that was so great. I needed that when I was a teenager. Wait, I need that now. Like, do you have one for us? And to me, that was a huge confirmation, because I always had in the back of my mind, that's what I wanted to do, but I didn't feel ready. So I was kind of tiptoeing my way through starting with children and then going to teens. And so I hunkered down, and for about 2 years, I wrote another book that I never published, and it was called Shatterproof. And this was really the deepest, darkest moments of my pain. And I thought that that's what I was supposed to share. Like, if I share what I went through in very big detail like that, I think that's what I'm supposed to do. So anyway, I spent 2 years, and it was this huge emotional journey, because I was just getting all that stuff out of me, and it was done and written and ready to go. Like, put it in the world. And I just stared at it. I wasn't excited. I just stared. I was like, I can't do it. And I was like fighting with like having this inner battle. You can't do it. Why? But you spent so much time. And then it hit me. It was like, this was part of your story, but it's not the story anymore. And so I did a complete rewrite. So it was called Shatterproof. And what I did, I looked at that and I said, okay, well, that was the mess. And I'm very open and vulnerable about talking about those. It just needed something different. And what I came up with was I needed to share how I got through it, not just stay stuck in it.
Right.
And I looked at it, I was like, well, how did I get through it? I didn't even really know. And then when I analyzed it from that perspective, it came down to 7 key steps. And so then I thought, well, how can I put this in an easy way or fun way or powerful way for women to read? And I thought, well, the goddess is a great energy because that, a goddess stands in her power. There is no doubt that she is confident and that she is here with purpose and a superpower. And we all have that superpower within us. And so then each letter of the word goddess is an affirmation and a teaching. And that to me was, I just wanted women to have that feminine energy to connect to, because it is all about this inner superpower that we have and how we put that into the world.
I love it.
So, and then the main, the subtitle is Claim Your Power, Recognize Your Highest Potential, and Live Your Best Goddess-Inspired Life. So each step really helps you do those 3 things.
So if we go back to the unpublished book, Shatterproof,
yeah,
you spoke briefly, and I think it's important to go back and touch on it because this is where folks tend to get stuck sometimes. You talked about the mess, and probably most people at some point in their life will go through a situation or circumstance that they would define or describe as messy or a mess. I truly believe that those messy times in our life are valuable teachers to us. And we have the opportunity, it's kind of a fork in the road where we can take the mess and do what you did and say, okay, what has this taught me? Because there were characters involved in that mess. There was probably your mom was part of that, and your now ex-husband, and maybe some now ex-friends, and some now still friends that were part of that journey with you. So we can either take that fork in the road and I'm going to make up a story and I'm going to stay victim to this mess that I've been through. Or I am going to say, you know what, that was the story then, like you said, I'm rewriting that story because this is what I want my life to be about. And you took that road, probably, likely, I'm guessing, less traveled, to decide, no, I'm not going to continue to tell the same story over and over again, which lets me stay in that position of being a victim. And each time I tell it, I probably even embellish it more than what the truth really is, even though the truth was pretty messy. I'm going to throw a little more like icing on the cake to make it really yummy for everybody to want to, dive into and have a bite of. What did you learn? What was the most valuable lesson you learned from the messy time in your life? At least that was that one transition period at 37, just waking up and saying, I don't want to be in this marriage. This partnership is not healthy for either of us, nor our 2 children to move forward. I need to unravel from that, etc. What did you learn having gone through that, not only about yourself, but others?
That's a really great question too. I think because, again, that just discovering those positive affirmations was so transformative for me. It put me out of the box. And, I'm in the deep South and everything's very in the box, and everyone stays in the box. Like your role as a woman, your role as a wife, your role as a mother, religion, everything's in the box. And I started just questioning, like, well, why do I believe these things? Why do I believe I'm lovable? Why do I believe this? Why do I believe that I should have stayed in a marriage when I was dying? Yeah. And so I started questioning everything and just learning. And then, I started through this research finding other healing modalities like EFT, emotional freedom technique, NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And I was just trying everything. Like, is this going to work? And when I found things that were outside of the box and they were working, and why have I never heard of these? And why don't any of my friends who might be going through the similar things never heard of these? Like, why? And they're working. They're more powerful than anything I've ever been taught before. So, I just felt like Yes, and back to what you were saying, I couldn't stay the victim anymore. And I had to rewire these thoughts to create something new. If I stayed in the old thoughts and the old belief systems, then I wasn't going to grow and expand. And I was going to stay small. And yeah, it's safe there, trying new things and talking about new things and talking about taboo topics or pain in general or all of those things. That's not, you don't feel really safe doing that at first until you realize that like you're the lighthouse for somebody else. And then one day someone else says, hey, what you said really hit home with me. Me too. You hear me too. And you go, okay, I'm not alone. I'm supposed to be sharing this. I'm supposed to be doing this. So I guess I hope that answers your question too, but it was just, I kind of went from this in the box, not challenging anything. And I hate to use the word challenge, that might be the wrong word, but just questioning, just why am I here? How did I get here? And how can I see things differently? And how can I grow? And how can I expand? And how can I give more power to who I really am? And more importantly, the potential of who I can be instead of the fear or the past failures of the past. Like you don't have to stay stuck there. Exactly. And the second subtitle of the book is recognize your highest potential, because you can start living a life from your potential and from possibility of the past.
Yeah, and I think you bring such an important point up, and that is being in that box. You're stuck in what culturally, especially in the South, women are raised a certain way, to behave a certain way in relationships as children and spouses and mothers, as you said. And when we're young, we really don't have the resources to understand what values are. We're really handed down these values by hopefully well-intended people, likely a parent or parents or a guardian of some sort. And they're merely passing down the beliefs that they have, that were probably passed down by beliefs from people who were passing them along to them. And so the layering starts to happen. And I don't know how often, probably around 15 or 16, that we're given the opportunity, or that we're wise enough yet to step back and do what you did at 37 and say, wait a minute, let me have a look at all this stuff in this box. Do I really believe X? Does that fit for me? Is that part of my value system? Do I really believe that? And if so, great, reconfirm, or it's confirmation that you do. And if not, start to peel the layers down off of that to decide, okay, I don't believe that, or I believe some of that. What do I believe? To ask those really compelling questions that help you kind of break that box down and get out of those 9 dots that have been so constricting and so constraining for you. So good for you for having the courage, because that takes, you have to be a badass sister to be able to do that, because it's uncomfortable and it's scary and it's lonesome and it's unsure and it's, there's 40 miles of rough road to get over, and until you get to the other side of it, there's a lot of self-doubt and all kinds of emotions that would be really easy to say, no, I'm just going to go back to the box. I knew how to deal with that. I'm just going to go do that instead. You said, nope, I'm going to bust loose and I'm going to see what else is out there for myself, because I really want to thrive. And you had a beautiful mechanism for inspiration, which were 2 beautiful daughters that you knew if you didn't break out of the box, they weren't going to break out of the box. And then it would be a generational pass down, which you kind of experienced a little bit. So your book.
Well, I was just going to say, that's why the first affirmation, the G in goddess, is I'm getting outside my comfort zone, because you got to get outside your comfort zone. And that comes with a lot of self-awareness. And I have some self-awareness exercises just to take a snapshot of your life. But, what no one told me was, it's going to be uncomfortable, and that's okay. You're going to lose people that you think are your friends. You're going to find new ones that see your greatness even more. So it's like you get scared on the people you leave behind, but what you're not focusing is on all of the great people that are like waiting on you to step into who you really are, so they can support you. It is, I mean, your whole world is going to shift when you change the things you do, but that doesn't mean it's not for the best. Is it easy? No. Is it worth it? Yes.
Yeah. And on the other side of it, at least what I found in my own experiences, once we're willing to kick down the walls of most of the time our own self-constructed prison, there is unbelievable freedom once we get past all of that. And there's nothing that feels better, to me at least, than freedom. To be yourself. Authenticity, I believe, is a foundation we build our whole life on. And to get so comfortable with who you are from the inside out, that your true essence, and then to start to show up in the world as that person with everything true about you. I've always said telling the truth about life is the best thing one can do for themselves, for sure. Now, I love how you wrote the book, because you took the word goddess and you made it kind of an acronym, if you will. So each of these 7 secrets or 7 steps in the book, G stands for, like you just said, get outside of your comfort zone. O, overcome the negative self-talk, and on. Do you have a favorite chapter in the book?
Oh, that's a great question. I'll say the most in my coaching section or sessions, O is where we spend the most time, because I feel like women overall have this inner critic between our ears that we give so much power to. And so when I can sit down with you and I hear that voice, because it comes out, you don't even know it's coming out, and we dissect that and flip the script, that's probably when a lot of the magic happens. So from a coach perspective, I love that one because it's very powerful when you're working with someone else. For me personally, it's probably D is dare to dream big, and making sure you're dreaming bigger, because I am such a dreamer. I love to dream. And I have like big, crazy, scary dreams, but I love to give power to those. So to me, that's just fun and the visionary side of me, but I always like to pull that out of people too. So if I had to say one, it might be that one.
And they're all great. Every chapter is great.
You got to have all 7. You got to do
all 7 are great. And for those who want a really good, it's kind of a workbook to go through and really start to peel the layers of the onion down. Like I said earlier, I'm curious when you say that in your coaching, you've noticed that once we get past this overcoming self-talk, that's when kind of the rocket takes off. For our listeners, what's a valuable tool or 2 or step or exercise that you can share with us today that they can immediately put into place to start down that path of overcoming that negative talk?
Yeah, so I have 2 favorites. Actually, I have so many favorites, it's not even funny. But I would say, like, if you're not used to doing this work, and you got to figure out, like, if you're feeling stuck and powerless and you really just don't know what to do next, but you know there's something more, you got to take inventory of your life. So I call this the goddess wheel of life. And basically you look at the 6 main areas of your life: your career, money, relationships, being friendships and romantic, your hobbies, your interests, your spirituality. Kind of get the main categories in life, and then you rank them 1 to 10. So 10 is I'm off the charts happy. 1 is I'm miserable. What can I do to get out of this, right? And so when you do that, you start, like, look at your bottom 3, right? So your bottom 3 scores are really where you're ignoring something, or there's something going on in here that's holding you back. I call them little SLBs, the self-limiting beliefs. And so when you start asking yourself, well, why is this score so low? Guess what happens? All the fears and excuses come up for you. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough money. I don't have enough support. The list goes on. And then you have to say, well, why do I believe that? Because it's not necessarily true. It's just your belief that it's true. So when you can bust through those blocks and flip that script to get rid of the excuses and the fears and the SLBs, then you know where you really need to focus your affirmations on, and then you start speaking it into existence, and then that's very intentional. So, I'm big on intentional living, because that's the GPS. You don't get in a car and drive across the country without a GPS. You can. It's going to take you a lot longer to get there, right? It might take you a year. So do you want to get to where you want to go faster, or do you want to not, just take your time? I want to get to where I want to go faster. So you got to put your GPS on every day, and you got to set your intention, but you got to know what your intention needs to be to work for you.
Yeah, I think that's an important point, because oftentimes I think we set goals or we make New Year's resolutions, and they're so big that we get discouraged after a week or two or a month or two because we don't feel successful. And I truly believe what I hear you saying is intentional living is about every single day. And
Every
it's
day.
sometimes about every single moment of
Every moment. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I also, with what you're saying, I was thinking about this on my drive to my office today. I believe that happiness and peace and contentment are a choice. However, I think for us to get to a place where we know we have a choice, we have to be aware. And sometimes that's where we fall short, is we're not present enough. We're not quiet enough. We're not still enough to be aware of, oh, I just said, you're so stupid to myself. Because you're so habituated and practiced at saying that, then you, before you know it, you start to believe that. Versus if you wait, stop a minute, Annie, wait a minute. You just said, I'm so stupid. The first question I always tell people and ask myself is that true? And the answer is no, that's not true. You're just so used to saying that. You're so used to having that as a practice. And that awareness that I just said it again allows me to back up and go, no, in this moment, I have the opportunity to make a choice. And the choice is, I'm going to be honest about what the answer to that question is. And then the next choice is, what is true? And then the next choice is, how am I going to intentionally live in and around the truth? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I mean, it's so important. And I think that's why the first step tells us claim your power, because the first step is every moment of every day, you have the power to take your power back, but you don't even know, we don't know that we're just constantly giving it away because, I'm a huge law of attraction junkie. So guess what? Every second of every day, we are a magnet for something. It is the law of the universe. So when you take your power back over that, you suddenly become a magnet for all the things you do want into your life instead of all the things you don't want. Because when you're walking around saying, I'm stupid and I'm not enough and I'm too much of this, guess what you're attracting? All of that. And so, part of claiming your power back is knowing that in every second of every moment, you have a choice. And every day we're giving it away because we don't know. And, that goes back to intentional living. It goes back to positive affirmations. It goes back to law of attraction. Like all these things are so important. And what we do is we're using them to work against us most of the time.
Right.
So how do we just be aware to start using the power that we have to make things work for us instead of against us?
Yeah. And I think another big one that's very much closely related to that is I hear men and women say, he made me feel, or she made me feel.
Ooh, yeah.
And I'm kind of a language cop. I say, wait a minute, here's what really happened. Annie said a seven word sentence, and you took that 7-word sentence and you conjured it up into something that made you feel something. And really all that happened is Annie spoke 7 words. You got to decide what you were going to do with those 7 words. And you could have just, it could be as simple as, those are 7 words. That's not a fit for me. I'm not going to hook into that or plug into that. Or, that roused up this, and these feelings are cooking in there because you haven't dealt with them that maybe had nothing to do with Annie. They had something to do with something that happened a long time ago.
It's a trigger. Those moments are so important. You
keep carting around. And I always say that people, places, things, and circumstances will show up in your life to reveal to you where you're not free. So if that elicits some emotion, anger, angst, anxiety, stress, sadness, whatnot, the key is to go back and say, okay, I just noticed that feeling that came up for me was anger. What's underneath the anger? What's underneath that? And it usually gets down to where we started this whole conversation is, I'm not enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not something enough, or the two thing that we started at. And so that's why I think this whole opportunity to really be present and aware is so important. Now I want to, before we move on, to finish up a little bit here, Your final chapter in here is called Surrender to Self-Love. What do you mean by that? And why is that so hard for us humans to embrace?
Yeah, so when you ask me what's my favorite one, this is the most powerful one because I feel like as a Southern woman too, the worst thing you can call a Southern woman is selfish, right? Because we're supposed to be, everything to everybody. And everyone would say, well, Ashley, what is self-love? Does that mean I go get my nails done? Do I take a bath? I'm just a busy mom. Well, yeah, you can, but that's not what self-love is. Self-love is honor. And instead of this negative connotation that self-love is selfish, I really want to change that script in everyone's mind that self-love is honor. And a goddess walks into the room and she is filled with self-love because she is filled with honor, because she knows she has a superpower. And she's not going to dim that power for anybody because the world needs her. The world needs her power. Or, if she doesn't honor who she is, she's doing the world a disservice. So what is self-love? It's not going to take a bath or reading a book or going to get your nails done. It's these 7 steps combined. So, to summarize those, it's you got to get outside your comfort zone. You got to overcome negative self-talk. You got to dream. You got to remember who you are and what you want and where you want to go. And then you declare those desires because, again, law of attraction, you're attracting something at all times. So you got to get clear on what you want. Then E is expect miracles because we get caught up in expecting the worst things to happen instead of the what ifs that can be great and better than we ever imagined. And then the S is stand in your truth because when you do all those steps, it gets a lot easier to stand in who you are and what you're supposed to do and put into the world. And when you do those 6 things, that is my definition of surrendering to self-love. But it all, again, comes with prioritizing you, getting to know you. You got to see you and hear you. And so this whole 28-day goddess mindset transformation, it's about giving yourself 5 minutes a day for 28 days. And if you do that and you do these 7 steps, you're going to see massive changes in your life because guess what? You're going to grow, you're going to expand. And then the next 28 days, your starting point is a whole nother realm of possibilities. So I say it's 28 days, but you can do it every 28 days and be a different person within each phase of those.
Yeah, this is kind of like your monthly handbook where you sit down and July 1st, which is coming right around the corner here, July 1st, you start going through these 28 days and you'll learn so much by going through this because you have a lot of good journaling prompts and exercises to do and questions that you ask and I am statements that you encourage people to make. And then you get to the end of that 28 days and you've learned so much. And then here comes August 1st and you start over again. And then you get to see the progress you made because August 1st is going to look a heck of a lot different than July 1st on the life wheel. It's your IMs are going to be much more.
What can happen in 28 days. Like it will blow your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a practice. I've been teaching my Lines in the Sand course now for 7 years. And I live in that, and my whole Lines in the Sand is a year-long program, and it's similar to kind of what you've done here. And I'm marinating in it because if I'm not teaching it, I'm preparing about it. If I'm not preparing about it, I'm maybe reworking some content because of what I've learned from teaching it. So I'm in this practice constantly. And I know if I wasn't, my ass would be out of the saddle more often than not. I'd be in the ditch instead of squarely on my horse in the saddle where I need to be. And what I mean by that is stay home, be present within yourself because it's not a shiny object out there that's going to change your life. It's going within and introducing yourself to yourself maybe for the first time as to who you are, or re-recognizing, re-embracing that person that is just so beautifully made by what I like to say, there's a divine all-knowing entity that I'm part of, but had this design for me. And I need to trust in that. I need to understand that whether we believe it's God or universe or source, whatever one wants to call it, that energy has this beautiful divine plan all put down in place for us. If we're just willing to let go and trust and follow the inspired actions along the way, life's going to be, man, you're going to roll in on two wheels at the end and go, man, that was one hell of a ride.
Yes, and it's a free ride, the ride of freedom, right? When you can really just be who you know you're meant to be.
Yeah.
And I do have a goddess 5-minute meditation, because I'm like, how can I make this so easy for people to do something for 5 minutes? If it's read 10 pages, read 10 pages. If you can't do that on the way to work, listen to a 5-minute guided meditation. I mean, like, you're aware you're driving, but part of it says, my dreams are my destiny. I surrender to the greatness within me, because your dream is unique to you. And you've got to connect to that. Not only do you've got to do whatever it takes to connect to that, because it's yours for a reason. And you're meant to be, a lighthouse for someone else because of that dream. Like, the world is waiting on you. So goddess, wake up, right?
Right. I also love what you've done, the format you've done. Not only is the format very usable and immediately implementable, but you've also gone on YouTube. At the end of each chapter, you have a YouTube link where the reader can go to YouTube and listen to a video of you either doing a meditation or some extra coaching that you've presented as a companion to this book. And I think that's such a wonderful addition to the workbook. And that's, you're not charging for those videos, and your book's very reasonably priced for someone to change their entire life, to reinvent who they are, to quit playing small, to step out of the box like you've done. Why wouldn't you invest in something like this for yourself, right?
Yes, I mean, when I was a single divorced mom, that's who I feel is kind of my avatar. I didn't have money for empowerment coaching or workshops and things like that. I was just trying to survive, and so when I kind of go back to myself, I just remember feeling so lonely and unsupported. And how could I connect to readers more? So I just was like, here's a video, like, it's me, it's talking to you. Hopefully you can feel my heart. It's something a little more personal, but there's a face, and, there's a name, and there's a video. And, if it's midnight and you're crying, like, turn on a video and know that, like, I'm here with you energetically and I feel your pain. And so it does have interactive videos for each chapter, and then the 5-minute meditation as well. Just anything I could do to offer free resources for people, because I know how it feels.
I will put in the show notes the title of the book and all of your social media links and whatnot. But yes, the book is called Goddess, Wake Up, Reclaim Your Power, Recognize Your Highest Potential, Live Your Best Life. Love that very much. I'm curious, Ashley, a couple more questions here and then we'll let you go. But do you have a favorite book?
Yes, I do. Oh my goodness. It is The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success by Deepak Chopra. What is my all-time favorite? I've read it. I keep reading and rereading it. It's an easy, quick read, but my most important part of the book is the law of Dharma. And kind of going back to what we just talked about, everyone is here and created with one unique ability that no one can do better than them. And it's a universal law. So I just want everyone to connect to that one unique ability, that one superpower that they have, and give it power and put it out to the world.
Yeah, I liken that. I'm such a metaphor. Life's easier for me if I can think of things through metaphors. I liken it to, there's an orchestra. We're all part of an orchestra, and only we can play our instrument as well as we can play it. But if we decide not to show up, the orchestra doesn't sound as good as it could. So the orchestra needs all of us to show up and play our instrument, whatever that is, whether it's coaching and writing like you do, or you're a mad scientist and have all kinds of things to offer to the world. We have to bring our instruments to the party so the orchestra can just be the best there is, for sure.
I love that. I love imagery. I tell lots of stories with, all sorts of things. So I'm going to have to add that to my repertoire.
There you go. What's next for you?
What's next?
Yes.
Goodness, that's a great question. I'm not sure. I know there's more books. I don't know what, I don't have a title or anything like that. I can tell you the podcast world has blown me away. I have a podcast called Goddess Talk. I kicked it off with season 1 right when COVID hit. So I was always on the other side, and I've been blown away being on this side and connecting to women and podcasters around the world. I'll tell you, I'm so humbled to connect to women across the country. And then recently it's been with women in India and Nigeria and Sweden and United Kingdom. And it's just this amazing what you can do when you're connected to a bigger purpose, or and this was nothing that was ever on my radar. I never thought I would be able to do that. And so right now I'm just in a moment of such humility and such gratitude and connection that I got to figure out more ways to just, how do I connect even bigger and with more women? So that's all I know.
Just keep saying yes.
Yes.
And no to things that aren't fitting for that, for sure. Is there something that I should have asked you or could have asked you that I didn't, just because I didn't know better?
Oh my goodness, I think we covered everything and then some. I had so much fun. That was quite a badass conversation, in my opinion.
I think so too. Well, you're certainly a badass, and I really appreciate you spending some time with us. Once again, all of our listeners out there, go grab the book Goddess Wake Up. I'll put the link to it so you can get it easy enough in the show notes. And stay connected with Ashley here. She has a lot to teach all of us, and I've certainly learned a lot from you. And I thank you once again for your time today.
Thank you so much.